Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be joining us today. Thank you for coming in and having a look at this webinar today, all about scope creep and how you can manage it more effectively in your business to improve profits. I am really excited to go through this with you today. We have an all-star panel who's going to share their experience working in practice and how they are managing scope creep on a day-to-day basis. Before we kick off the webinar, I'd love to know whether or not you're currently working in public practice. I assume most of you joining the webinar will be given our content today, but it's always good to know if you've got a couple of people just sneaking in who aren't working in public practice. We want to understand a little bit more about what we do. So we'll leave that poll up for a couple of more seconds as we have a few more people join today. Just a quick reminder and some housekeeping. If you've joined our webinars before, you'll be familiar with this. However, our session will be recorded and a copy of the resources and a copy of the webinar will be sent to you after the webinar is wrapped up. Anything that we do discuss during the webinar will be shared with you as well if there's any playbooks or other resources we mention. On the right-hand side of your screen is a tab with a couple of little sections in there. If you would like to chat with each other, drop a note in there and let us know where you're calling in from today, or if you've got anything that you'd like to just comment on throughout the webinar, please pop that in the chat. However, if you have specific questions about some of the content that we've brought up or something that you'd like the panelists to ask, please put that in the Q&A box. It's much easier for us to track. If we have time to address Q&A today, we absolutely will. If not, we will take our best endeavours to come back to you later, and the Q&A chat is the best way for us to manage that moving forward. So today's webinar is brought to you by Ignition, and Ignition is the #1 revenue generation platform for accounting professional service businesses across the globe. If you are seeking greater efficiency and profitability for your business, Ignition is absolutely the tool that you need to use, and I've been using it in my practice for over a decade. There are more than 8,000 customers using Ignition who can testify to how it's changed their organization across the globe. And it integrates with all the leading cloud-based accounting apps, Xero, QuickBooks Online, and MYOB, along with other tools, making the whole system of Ignition seamlessly integrated into your practice. There's a poll up on the screen. I'd love you to answer whether or not you've heard about Ignition, currently using it, or you'd like to learn a little bit more about Ignition. We'll also have a quick demo at the end of this. I'd love for you to stay on and understand a little bit more about how you can use it every day. Now, a little bit about me, and we won't dwell on me because it's not what you're here for. My name's Rebecca. I am the head of accounting at Ignition, which means I get to do these cool webinars for you, but I'm also in practice and I run my own accounting firm. I'm a director at Business Depot, which is an Eastern Seaboard accounting and other professional service firm in Australia, and I head up the Sydney accounting operations. So joining me today is an all-star panel. We have Beck Buchanan, who is the founder and CEO of Straight Up Bookkeeping, Bo Gaudron, the operations manager from GrowthWise, and Pete DeBus, the director at Principal Focus. So 3 great individuals who are all managing and dealing with scope creep every day in their businesses and are here to share their insights and war stories with you today. So some of the things that we will be learning and going through will be how to set and manage client expectations clearly from the start, how to spot scope creep before it impacts your bottom line, how to turn scope creep into a new revenue opportunity, and how you can use Ignition to protect your time and ensure you get paid every time that you do work for clients, because that's what we're here for. None of us went into this to work for free. So without any further ado, I'd love to bring on our first panelist today, Beck Buchanan. Hey, Beck, how are you?
Just take myself off mute. I'm very good. Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me here today. At least we won't forget each other's names.
Absolutely. It makes things a little bit easier. Now, Beck is a chartered accountant and founder of Straight Up Bookkeeping, a certified B Corporation. After 15 years in corporate roles, she launched her firm 7 years ago to support purpose-led businesses. Today, Straight Up Bookkeeping has a team of 8, a successful podcast, and multiple accolades, including Xero's Bookkeeping Partner of the Year in 2024, Bookkeeper of the Year in 2023 at the Australian Accounting Awards, and recognition as one of Ignition's top 50 women in accounting. Thank you again so much for joining us. What a rap sheet. That's great.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's such a privilege to chat on my first Ignition webinar today.
Fantastic. Now, let's just dive straight in. You've worked both in large accounting firms and your own boutique business. What have you learned about scope creep in each of those environments?
Yeah, I cut my accounting teeth at KPMG. I spent about 6 years there, so I do know the big firm world, and now running my small practice. And what I would say is scope creep should be treated the same in both. There's no difference as far as I see it. We're all in business to make profit, be it at the big end of town or in the smaller boutique end of town. And the way I like to think of scope creep is, say you're at the grocery store and you've bought your groceries, but then at the point of sale, you see a bunch of chocolates. You wouldn't, if you're at Coles, just steal a twirl at that point and go, oh, I've paid for my groceries, I'm going to steal the twirl. Yeah, in service-based businesses, that's exactly what we let happen all the time. Our clients are paying for this service, yet they ask us for this one over here that's not in scope, and we let them have it for free just because we don't know how to address it, or we think, oh, we'll let this one slide. And that's not a great way to run a business. So if the supermarkets won't let it happen, nor should we. But in a larger firm, you can cope with it better than we can in a smaller firm. I mean, larger firms are great at tracking time and clawing back overruns. But if the decision is we're going to let this one through to build relationships or whatever, a large firm can cope with it better than a small firm, which scope creep eats into our personal time, our team's overtime, our profitability. And it's really about just maintaining our survival, I guess, and profitability. It's got higher stakes in a small firm. So as easy as it is to let one go in terms of a little bit of scope creep, we absolutely shouldn't let it happen at the small end of town in boutique services like my own firm.
Absolutely. I love that comparison to stealing candy. I've never heard that before, and I'm going to use it all the time now. Your firm focuses on purpose-driven or mission-aligned businesses. When your clients are in those sectors, how do you maintain your boundaries while staying true to your ethos?
Yeah, well, whether clients are purpose-led like we are or not, in my experience, I think there's just two types of clients. Time and time again, there's those that like preface an email or request with, I know this is going to cost money, I really want you to do it, just send me a bill, thank you so much, versus those who just say, can you do this, never mention money, force you to bring it up, and then ignore it and just ask for more things. And that's whether they're purpose-led or not. I think it's just more individual character. So the way we approach it at Straight Up Bookkeeping is the same across the board. No one gets special attention or special treatment. We know what our scope is. It's clearly defined in our engagement letters. It's there for easy reference. And whether you're purpose-led or not, we treat you the same way. Because generosity in service offering without boundaries can really harm a client relationship no matter what. Because if you give too much or you give away your services for free, you can feel resentful, and that's not a great space to be in. So you can absolutely lead with heart and be purpose-led, but you have to protect your business, because if we have purpose with no profit, we're not going to be here in 1 to 2, 3 years time, and then we're not having any impact whatsoever.
Absolutely. And even on the management of, an NFP, for example, they are well placed to learn some of that themselves at times, who often give away too much without being commercial enough. So in your practice, what systems or automations have been most effective in preventing untracked time or out of scope tasks?
I'm so proud of where we're at now in our almost 7th year of business. It hasn't always been the case, but I feel like we are pretty fantastic at this now. We all know what this, we being my team, we all know what our scope is. And as soon as something that looks like it's out of scope comes up, we talk about it. We're like, this has been requested. How do we approach it? We either email or call the client, decide on the best way forward. And then we use carbon as well in our practice as ignition. So we have an out of scope work item in carbon. And so when we start the out of scope work, we turn on the out of scope work item within that client profile. We track the time. So it's like a separate cutaway piece of work that we can bill separately on. Or if it was a bigger piece of work, we would start its own work item in and of itself in carbon. So it's not like we're just turning on the weekly bookkeeping timer to do the out of scope work. We are tracking it separately. And then within Ignition, Angie Poole, who's my account manager, helped me set this up a few years ago, and it's amazing. We have out of scope, if required, recurring weekly billing in all of our client proposals, so that once we've had the scope inclusion discussion, we've done the work, at the end of the month, we can bill for that work so simply in Ignition if we need to. And if we don't need to, we just delete that draft bill and we never use it. So it's just so easy, to agree to the work or not do the work. And then if we do it, we bill it so easily from Ignition based on timesheets from Carbon. And it works perfectly. Nothing gets through anymore unbilled.
I love that. And because you've included that paragraph in your engagement, your clients are very aware, this is my scope, and they are going to track out of scope. You're really bringing it to the forefront of that engagement. So I think that's fantastic. So then how do you handle, and you've answered a little bit of this, and how do you handle the ongoing recurring engagements where scope naturally shifts over time? So this isn't like an ad hoc item, but your overall scope is ongoing, going to change.
Well, the way Ignition works for us is every single 1 July we re-engage, and that's a perfect time to reassess pricing. Prices generally always go up, either a little bit for CPI or a lot if we're repricing, and also to reassess the scope and the service offering. So that every year at least we're capturing any clients that may have, ebbed and swayed in terms of their original scope over that period. But we also have, the way we've set up our services in Ignition is we have every service as a discrete offering that can be added on or removed at various times. So say midway through the year, a client decides they want help with payroll, we can easily just, and then engage for that work as a separate work item. Or if they need to remove payroll, then it's easy as well. So it means we can grow or shrink if required with our clients as time goes on. We're not locked into anything. That's how we manage changing scope, I guess, over the course of the year. Actually, I should also mention for new clients where we may have got the scope a little bit incorrect, which isn't often because bookkeeping is pretty predictable and recurring in my experience. But if we have a 3-month clarity call with new clients just to say, this is what we scoped, this is how we arranged your engagement, it is or isn't working based on these things that we found in the last 3 months, let's shift it in this way and we'll change the pricing or scope at that point. So it's not set and forget. We're just always communicating with our clients that we're going to have check-ins. There may be changes in scope and just taking them on the journey.
That's fantastic. And that would work really well. I imagine those circumstances where your client, they're far more organized internally than they really are. So you end up putting in a lot more hours than expected.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to new practitioners about building a culture of profitability and setting those boundaries from the start of your engagement?
It sounds simple, but just understand your scope in the first place. I think, and I speak from experience, in the first 1 to maybe even 3 years of my business, I just thought I was doing bookkeeping. I'm like, yeah, I'll do your bookkeeping, and here's a monthly fee. And then I was like, well, bookkeeping is that sort of payroll, and maybe that's accounts payable. And I was just doing all the things for very little money. And obviously I've got wiser since then and had some hard lessons. And now I understand that bookkeeping is not payroll. It's not accounts payable. It's not cash flow forecasting. It's not budgeting. These are all discrete items. And it's also not tax advice, which now I say, if anything looks like tax advice, it's like that we are not tax accountants. Please go to your accountant. And I'm very good at saying we don't do that. So I think just understand your scope, of service offerings, but even within the service offerings also have scope. So for us, we have everyone on a package, and within the package, we also say in our Ignition service details is your bookkeeping, weekly bookkeeping is up to 1.5 hours per week. If it goes beyond that, we will let you know, and we will rescope the service, because if we just say we do weekly bookkeeping, that can look really different for a $25 million client to a $1 million revenue client. So we need to have scope within scope to have that conversation foundation if things get out of hand. So understand your scope, make sure your team understands scope so that your team are able to say, this is not in scope, what should I do? My team are amazing at that now, but maybe historically we weren't, and we just try and people please and say the client asked for this, I better do it for them, not understanding that we're not getting paid for that, and that's really detrimental to our business. And then just don't be scared of having the hard conversations with clients, or not even hard conversations. Treat your clients like adults who are able to make decisions about whether they want to engage you for a service that's not currently included. And if they don't, then that's cool. But at least you've had that clearing conversation up front, and you're not resenting them for doing free work for them three months down the track. So know your scope, get your team to know your scope, be brave, and get paid for the work. That's my advice.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned in there around your team being really good at managing scope now as well. So as a leader, how do you communicate that internally, like the importance of staying within scope, especially when, your team naturally, as people who are excited about doing a good job, we want to make the clients happy. So it's really that conflict between saying yes and no. How do you manage that in your business?
Well, yeah. We are not just here as bookkeepers completing tasks. We are here contributing to the success of straight up bookkeeping, I guess, is my foundation communication, that if straight up bookkeeping doesn't succeed, then, or I should say, if we do succeed, let's do a positive spin on it. Then I can give everyone pay rises if that's in line for performance that year. I can donate, 1% of our revenue to local charities, which is one of our goals. I can expand our service offerings. I can take us all to XeroCon, etc. So there's more to it than just starting your day and completing the tasks in front of you. It's thinking about straight up bookkeeping in this case as a business that needs to succeed. And then certainly within that guardrail, delighting clients is absolutely what we want to do, and we can do that within the realm of the scope that they are paying us to delight them in. So if they want great bookkeeping, we can absolutely do that, but if they want payroll and it's not in their retainer, then there's no reason we need to be delighting them with payroll until they start paying for it. So it's pretty simple when I think about it now, but it wasn't always. Like, I absolutely empathize that it's not always, but just clearly reminding everyone that we're in this to be a business and make profit, I think, is a good message.
Absolutely. And that profit can be shared around, if you're the right kind of leader, which it sounds like you are, shared around your team and the wider community. Thank you so much for that, Beck. That was really great insight into what you're doing and how you're managing scope.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce and invite on our next panelist. Good morning, Bo. I don't know if it's morning or afternoon where you are. I love this time of year. Everyone's in even more unusual time zones. I'm pretty sure it's morning.
It's morning, yeah. So Newcastle, Australia, it's definitely morning here at the moment.
Up the road from me, sort of, like 3 hours up the road. Thank you for joining us today. Now, Bo is GrowthWise's tech ninja and operations manager. He is the driving force behind operational excellence and has a passion for untangling complex processes and using technology to build smarter, more efficient ways of working for the GrowthWise team and their clients. He achieves this by designing technology-driven processes and implementing strategic frameworks that deliver consistent, scalable results, which as well, I have been watching what you do at GrowthWise from afar for many years, and I've always wished that I had one of you in my business as well. So I'm very, very keen to learn about what you're doing today.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
So diving in your role managing operations, what controls or workflows have you built into your system to spot scope creep early?
Well, after hearing Beck earlier, I did want to go through this a little bit because she touched on so many parts of it so well that I think it's hard to follow up from that. But one of the things that I did want to talk about is I think for a lot of people, scope creep is kind of, the whole idea and the wording of scope creep is generally it's happening at the end. And I think the biggest focus that you need to have is actually the start. So when you're actually engaging clients, and that's where Ignition comes in as a system for us, is actually having all of the services and everything clearly defined in terms of what we're going to actually deliver to a client so that we're aware and our team is aware what actually needs to happen, what we're already being paid for. And this can even go back further. So prior to us even sending a proposal to someone, for example, there's a lot of pre-qualifying questions that we'll ask a new potential client to kind of gauge, and Beck touched on this as well, in terms of what we do need to deliver. So we want to try and upfront get as close as possible in terms of the service offering that we need to put in front of our clients to be able to make it very clear to them what we're going to deliver to them so that hopefully later on down the track, scope creep is not necessarily as much of an issue. So if you do the things up front and get them right, you're more than likely, less likely to have an issue down the road with having to then consider what you may have delivered outside of services.
That process that you just discussed there, do you do that before you send out your first engagement to them?
Correct. Yeah. So if it's a brand new client to us, so just a web inquiry, phone inquiry, we'll go through basically a discovery process of asking different things about their business, and we also encourage if people are using Xero, because we use Xero at GrowthWise, that they actually invite us to Xero as well, so we can do a quick review of it. Because the other thing we need to remember is, us as accountants or as bookkeepers, there's things that we know that a small business owner may not. So a lot of the time, if we get access to their Xero, we can sometimes surface things ahead of time to say, hey, we've noticed this in Xero, or you're not using this particular feature. So it also allows us to tailor those services again from the start, where we might offer an initial service that's not necessarily ongoing, as a better experience for them to get better value out of the tools that they're already using as well.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I imagine through that process as well, then you kind of would cut off tire kickers really quickly because you're not just handing out prices, you're doing a proper scoping session before you engage.
That's correct. Yeah. So the biggest thing that we've realized out of this is we can very quickly identify. And again, so yes, there is time involved initially, but we'd much prefer to go through that service initially, and we can then sometimes actually reposition the service offering. So sometimes we might actually get an inquiry that can lead down the path of it actually being not business related, but maybe just an income tax return. But we can pick that up very quickly and say, okay, well, at the stage that you are in business, this is the more appropriate service for you. And even from that, we actually have quite a few clients that have come through that pathway where we've said up front, look, at the moment, your business doesn't really fit within our long-term service offerings, but within a year, they then get into that realm and we can go back. We already have that relationship there to be able to start off and doing an ongoing service.
That process sounds so much better than wasting your time with people who are not really interested properly in your business. Now, from your experience, when scope creep is a problem, is that primarily a people problem or a process problem?
It's definitely both. So I think that people, I think inherently in everyone that they want to help each other, or they want to help other people succeed. And I think that's a very difficult one to try and train for people to say when things are going outside of what we're currently getting paid for. So I did touch on it a little bit earlier, but when we actually do those services out of Ignition, it then goes into carbon based on the services that we've offered. So our team knows what they should be offering and what they should not be offering. So that's kind of tied into the offer of whether it's a people or systems process. So for me, if you don't have the system set up properly, you're going to have the issue anyway. And then the people part of it becomes making people conscious, or our team conscious, of what the delivery is, but also having conversations with everyone about being comfortable with having conversations where things are going to go outside of scope. And I think that for a lot of people, it becomes a very uncomfortable conversation because they go, I don't want to be told no. And I think the biggest thing for me is I used to be like that as well. And now I look at it and go, I'd much prefer to be told no, to find out the reasons for the no. But also sometimes the no will be, oh, look, I didn't realize this was going to cost me more money. And I go, great, because that would have cost us time if we delivered it, and it wouldn't have been a good experience on both sides. So being able to communicate it externally as well as internally with our team, I think just saves a lot of potential disruption. And I think overall it's actually improved the client experience for us, because sure, if you get a no, it's a no, but there's also the potential of a yes. And I think that's the thing that you should be more focused on, is have that conversation, because if you get a no, there's really nothing lost. If you didn't have that conversation and you just delivered the service, you've lost time and you've lost money. So just be aware of that. But if you get a yes, then it's like, well, great, we've won the work. We are now getting paid for that work, and we know what we need to deliver as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And nobody likes wasting their time and work when you're not going to have it recovered. So bringing that to the forefront of every conversation is made a huge difference in our business as well. Now, you're all over the systems at GrowthWise as well. How has the automation and integrations that you've set up help you maintain clear boundaries?
Sure, probably the biggest one, and I know that Ignition's actually rolled this out directly. So originally we actually built an integration ourselves to push jobs into Carbon, and that's now actually part of Ignition, that you can actually have your services mapped through to jobs. And then from there, those jobs in Carbon can have tasks, they can have time, they can have everything required overall, so that you know what's going on. So the automation for us, probably the big key piece, was being able to actually get that data into Carbon and get it in there very quickly. So previously, when we had to actually manually put in jobs per client, and the way that we're structured, we actually might have, say, 10 to 12 different jobs per client that we actually have within GrowthWise. That takes a lot of time to set up. But now that we've actually got the integration set up, so we can do things like repeating schedules, we can do templated jobs, things like that, our team knows very quickly from the time that someone signs a proposal exactly what they need to get started on. And even the onboarding process as well. So when we have a new client that's signed on, we have an onboarding job that comes into Carbon. It's got a checklist that actually can be changed a little bit according to what we actually directly need from a client, but it's already there, and it's just a matter of knowing the client's email to send it out. So it just shortens that time frame between the proposal acceptance and the delivery of work.
Yeah, that's great. So then your team would know straight away if a client contacts them, but that job does not exist in Carbon, then it's going to be out of scope because all of your jobs push through.
Yeah, correct. And so they can actually just look at the client in Carbon straight away and go, okay, well, for example, we do have bookkeeping services, but we don't offer it to every client that we have. So if they just click the client in Carbon, they can see the service offerings that they have, whether it's growth services that we've actually added in, whether it's just compliance, whether there's bookkeeping involved, they can see that overall. But on top of it as well, we can also, from that point, have a client manager assigned, a bookkeeper, and accountant with Carbon's roles. So there's a lot of things that can happen at that level that also makes it easier for our team to understand who is responsible for what. And I think that can also help with scope creep, because we try not to make everyone sort of deal with different clients. We want to have a consistent behavior in terms of our clients know that a particular accountant or a particular bookkeeper is, their bookkeeper, so to speak.
Yeah, that I can imagine would be quite a more seamless process than it used to be, having to enter all of that information manually as well.
Yeah.
So sticking with the tech side, what KPIs and dashboards are you using to track your jobs or anything that is running over scope? And not just scope, but budget as well, because scope is not necessarily just when you're adding an extra service, but when a service you're providing is taking far longer than you expected.
Correct, yeah, and I think that's probably a very good definition to talk through is scope creep. Like you said, it's not just always about something that you're doing that you're not getting paid for, in terms of, someone wants a new service and you've just started doing it, but a lot of the time it can actually be that you're allocating more time or you're spending more time on something that you expected. So when we actually do that delivery of the jobs into Carbon, every job in Carbon has a budget and it has a time, so we can see those values. So the time that's been utilized overall per client, the time that's been utilized per job as well, and a breakdown of the tasks. So Carbon primarily is probably where we're seeing all of that, to be actually able to make decisions on what we need to do and have a talk with our team if we can see things that are actually going, beyond the budget that we've already set or approaching it. And I think that's probably the more key thing, is that we can actually see the approach of when we're going to hit that point. And so we're normally able to actually act on it prior to it going over.
Yeah, and like, do you mind giving us an example of how you act on that or what that process then could look like?
Well, I mean, we have the advantage of having quite a small team, so that is one big part. Is so normally it's myself or Steph that are actually looking at these values to figure out where things are up to, and we can then go and approach one of our account managers and say, hey, we've realised this particular client, they're approaching the budget. Can you talk through the things that you're having to do, and whether it's actually that maybe the client's actually had growth, for example, where we can go back to our client and say, okay, well, based on our previous engagement, and Beck talked about this a little bit as well. So the re-engagement is normally at 1st of July. If we have a high growth client, maybe we're actually having that conversation early to say, look, you've doubled your headcount, for example, you've tripled your revenue, or whatever it may be, to actually increase the service offering that we need to do. So we can see what's happening from a time and budget perspective. Sometimes it's to do with growth, other times it might be to do with complexity. Sometimes it may just be that there's something that's come up, and it might be, so one that occasionally happens for us might be someone's connected a Xero add-on, not really understanding how the Xero add-on may work. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are in the chat that are probably pretty aware of this scenario. So we can actually have a talk and say, okay, well, what are you doing to fix this up? Have we gone back to our client to say that's something that we can actually offer as a service to make sure that things are mapped correctly, that the actual application isn't being connected to Xero properly, but also that's sitting outside of the service offering. But it may be that our accountant or our bookkeeper is just kind of manually handling a task at the time to get a particular lodgement or something done. So that's where we'll look at that and be able to see it ahead of time and actually go, okay, well, we need to squash that problem and look at how we're actually going to resolve it in a proper manner rather than actually just accepting it how it is.
Yeah, and it's great that you've got the KPIs and dashboards where you can manage that at a higher level and have some oversight. But then at that more individual accountant or bookkeeper level, more junior people in your team, how do you coach those team members who just want to get it done and are more focused on pushing the work out than following the proper processes?
I think it comes down to culture. So we have a saying that we always like to live by here, which is eliminate, automate, delegate. So we're always talking with our team, everyone in the team, not juniors, in particular, but our whole team to say, let's use that framework. So what are we doing that we could not be, could actually eliminate entirely? And that might be that we're using a system or something that provides an automation. Same with delegation. So finding actually like an actual machine or something that we can actually delegate to particular tasks to, or the automation of things as well. So we're always approaching it to talk to our team to say, okay, show me what you're doing, but let's think through about why you're doing it and have a chat about how we can improve that for the future. We very much are kind of against the just get it done mentality, because there's never any improvement in just get it done. So we're always talking with our whole team about, and it may be that they've found something, it might be within Xero. They're like, oh, why aren't we using this particular feature of Xero? Or why aren't we using this particular feature of Ignition or Carbon? So always having an open mindset to encouraging our team to actually find better ways of doing things rather than just going, I really need to get this done. Because if that's the status quo every quarter, for example, or every month, you're always going to approach that area of scope creep because you're never trying to improve upon what you're already doing.
Yeah. Now, when you actually have to have a conversation with your clients around pricing changes because of scope or whatever it might be, has the technology made it easier for you to have those conversations?
Oh, definitely. I think Xero in particular, being able to get a lot of data from Xero to be able to show like the things that I mentioned earlier. So being able to show, okay, well, here was your, employee count at this point in time. Here was your transactional level data at this point in time. Here's why things are now, taking more time for us to be able to complete, for example. It just really helps from that perspective. And I think Ignition as well, like we'd mentioned, and Beck mentioned this as well, being able to actually allocate those particular services, if they're quite well defined, it's very easy to then bring that up with the data that you can get from Xero, with the data that you can get from Carbon, to have that conversation. And again, like I said earlier, being comfortable with the fact that you might get, okay, well, I don't want, or, we can't afford or something, or it may just be, maybe we think of a different service, or maybe someone a client might say, okay, well, I may have a family member or someone that may be able to assist in a particular area of the business as opposed to engaging us. So it's definitely helped a whole heap being able to see all of the data from different sources to be able to then make those decisions and have those conversations with a lot of confidence. I think is the other big thing, to be able to go back to a client and say, well, I'm not just making this up. Here's everything that we have in terms of the overall data of where you are at as a business and the amount that we're needing to complete for you based on what's happening within your business currently.
I think that's great and super powerful to have that data backup to give you the confidence to have the conversations. That's, I love that technology has allowed us to do it now. So just before we wrap out, if you're able to, can you share an example of where a new workflow or system actually reduced your scope creep or improved your job recoveries?
It's probably still touching back on being able to actually bring all of that job data in from Ignition. So once someone signed it off, knowing those jobs are already in Carbon, because otherwise what would happen was when we were manually kind of intervening, our team would be like, hey, have you done this job in Carbon? I've done time or I've done something. And then you kind of just felt like, we were the bottleneck to actually allow all of that to happen. So I think the integration of so many APIs of different systems has been a huge help. And then obviously AI has just been a massive improvement for so many different things that we can do as well. So there's so much that I think that AI can assist with in terms of the preparation of data for us, that it's made a significant impact in being able to sort of reduce overall time involved in completing tasks. So one is being able to make sure you've got systems in place so that you're not manually having to do as many tasks as you normally would. But the other one is actually looking at different tools that are available to try and alleviate the workflows that you already have. And I think that's where I actually watched your talk this morning about this, about being able to alleviate tasks with the use of AI, or with the use of even, not necessarily even just AI. In some cases, it's just the use of software like Ignition to be able to really make your life easier because you're not having to manually handle something that you previously had to manually handle.
Yeah, I am totally open to AI in the right environment, helping us out, getting things done a lot quicker. Thank you so much for sharing all those insights and letting us have a look under the hood at GrowthWise, what you're doing. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks.
Now I'm going to introduce our last panelist for the day. We have Pete DeBus. Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm good, Rebecca, and yourself?
Oh, not too bad. Quite excited to dive into some of the more specialized work that you're doing as well and how you're managing scope. So Pete is a farm business advisor and accountant driven by opportunity and possibility. He has 5 years of corporate experience and 28 years working with agribusiness families and high net worth clients in regional New South Wales. He works with 12 fabulous people in Principal Focus and approximately 100 families, where he and his team provide services including strategic planning, succession planning, developing growth business models, business coaching, and accounting and taxation services, with a strong focus on looking out the windscreen instead of the rear view mirror. Principal Focus introduced Ignition into their business in 2018. Thank you again for joining us, Pete. That's I love that bio. It's very different to almost every single other accountant's bio I've ever read.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you work with many regional and agribusiness clients. How does scope creep show up differently in those industries compared to metro professional services as professional clients?
I'm not sure about the comparison of city versus country, but just in terms of our firm, we don't think of the people we work with as clients. We think of them as families, and we're very relationship based rather than transactionally based. On average, our average fee per client is between $20,000 and $30,000 a year, so we're spending lots of time with them. But it also means we become very embedded and very trusted. So it's quite easy for a conversation to turn into a new service or a new project if we let it. So we have to be quite disciplined in terms of managing the scope creep at that stage.
Yeah, and you describe your role as helping clients or helping your families navigate their businesses, and having these constant contact and conversations really becoming part of their families. How do you balance being responsive and helpful without letting the scope blow out, particularly in longer standing relationships, I suppose is tricky to navigate?
Yeah, it's duplicating a lot of the things that Beck and Bo said, but it's about being proactive and very structured in the way you deliver services. So getting that first ignition proposal in front of the clients and being really careful about the scope. And that scope comes from a strategic plan we develop with clients about where they want to go to, the now, where, how model. The how is really the list of all the projects we're going to work on, and we can put a dollar value against each of those, and that feeds into a proposal. So it's about being proactive in that, and we meet with a lot of clients on a monthly, quarterly basis, and we find that charging time, or not charging time, but establishing fees for those monthly, quarterly meetings means that a lot of the discussions we're having, we're getting paid for already. We find those clients on monthly meetings, we actually don't hear from them in between the monthly meetings, and we're getting paid for the monthly meetings, so it works out very well. The other thing is, within our ignition proposals, in big, bold, underline, it makes it very clear that it's not an all-inclusive service, and that we will charge additional service requests, we call them, for projects out of scope. Probably the last thing is we actually charge a standard fee per month for access and support, because we want clients to ring us if they've got a question. So we're actually charging, it's not a retainer, but it could be argued as a retainer, a monthly fee to all clients for them to actually spend time speaking with us.
Yeah, and I like what you've mentioned there about the monthly meetings, because they're there and they're booked in and they're being paid for. Whilst you do have that service agreement, the clients know they're going to see you, so they're kind of bottling up everything for the meeting. Exactly. And making sure that they're not interrupting you all month.
And I think it's far easier if they raise a question like they want to buy a property or something like that in one of those monthly meetings. It's far easier sitting across the table than on the telephone to actually say, well, that's outside of scope. I think it's harder over the phone when you can't see the body language, but if you're sitting across the table, it's much easier to have a discussion about a project being out of scope.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a client's project does start to expand beyond the original brief, how do you have that conversation to reset boundaries and expectations?
I suppose the first thing is not to get in that situation in the first place. and Bo made the comment, and I just was very much on the same page with him. The more proactive you are, you actually can map out where a project's going. And you can have discussions with the client up front about what's in the project and what's not. The classic example for us is a client wanting to buy a new farm and set up a business, a legal structure to own that farm. And that might be the project, but you know that there's going to be financing involved, and it's highly likely that you're going to get caught up in all the financing activities, which may be out of scope. So I think with experience on my side and training in terms of employees, it's about identifying where the project could go out of scope and everyone being prepared for that to happen. But as I said, if you can set the project up properly in the first place, there's less chance of it happening.
And with your team, which you mentioned as well, what structures or governance processes help keep your clients and your team stay focused and profitable rather than being derailed by those ad hoc requests? You've got the meetings internal where these things can be raised, but outside of the meetings, what structures and processes are being deployed in your business?
So we're a fairly automated business, and with the changes to the TASA laws, the tax agents laws, we've now got technology where we're effectively recording every phone call. We're not keeping that recording. We're just getting an executive summary that is automatically saved in our FYI files. So there's a really good track record of what's been discussed with clients along the way. The other thing is just training team members up to stick their hands up and say, hey, say to a client, I'm not sure we can do that. I'll need to have a chat with someone senior. Or alternately, just coming to us after a phone call and saying, I think I've got a problem. I think we're going to go outside of scope. But there is so much about culture, which once again Bo mentioned, and the culture you establish within your team base to recognise scope and to stick their hand up straight away.
How do you train your team on understanding what the scope is for a job? How do they access for that particular client or family what the actual scope is?
Yeah, similar to Bo, we use FYI rather than carbon, but we set up right from going back 5 or 6 years. Every task and every job for every client is set up through the ignition process, and Green Zero creates all the jobs in FYI. So everyone's very, very clear about what the scope of our work with every client is. And we actually have a very clear job descriptions for every employee. And in our job descriptions is the not to-do list, as in what your job is not. And the first one in every job description, including mine, is you are not allowed to do work unless there is an engagement in place. So it's part of the training system, but I think the not to-do list is quite often just as important as the to-do list in job descriptions.
I think it is, and I talk about the not included is also one of the most important parts of an engagement as well, is what we're not going to do for you, and making that very, very clear. And you mentioned including in your own job description, because it's us, the people at the top, who are more likely to break the rules.
We have to lead. Yeah. And the other thing we're doing is people are charging their time to what's called ad hoc queries, which is that access and support. So we can see every month whether ad hoc queries time is exceeding the amount we're getting paid every month as a retainer.
So that access and support, is that the same bundle or package for all of your clients, or do you adjust it depending on the size?
We've got levels 1 to 5, depending on what we expect the nature of the client is. And we're fixed pricing. We're not going to go back and charge a client something for that happened in the past, but where a client starts ringing us a lot more regularly, and we can see that time, if you like, is exceeding the access and support fee, we just put a phone call in and say, look, you need a lot more support from us, so we're just going to increase this access and support fee from level 2 to level 4 or whatever. There are some clients I've had to introduce a special 6 and 7 for, because they're spending a lot of time talking to us. But but we find the honest upfront conversation is not an awkward conversation. It's just an honest upfront conversation with clients. And I think you have to have confidence in the value you're delivering, and you have to have trust that the clients know you're not trying to rip them off or anything like that. Clients understand the effort you're putting in.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you share with us, before we let you go, a situation where a scope creep nearly derailed an engagement and how you were able to get that back on track?
They're rare. They're rare, and I'm normally the one who's most guilty out of all our team members of giving it all away. But I think it's just an honest phone call. It's just ringing a client and saying, "Hey, this project's got away on us. It's way outside the scope. If we go back to the written agreement, we agreed to do this and this. We're doing all these extra things. Can we talk about an additional fee?" I just think open and honest discussions with families is the easiest way to solve problems. Yeah. And at the same time, we give a money back guarantee. If we don't do something, we write the check straight away. Yeah. So clients respect that over time.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I don't hear a lot of that occurring. When you go back to reset those engagements or expectations, if you have like a large project that you're working on that's blown out, in your original scoping with them, do you let them know then at a very granular detail what that project will entail?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time setting up our services in Ignition, there's some services that go on for pages, being very clear about what we do. And so we can go through and tick each one of those things off as we get the particular parts or tasks within a project done. So we are, if you spend the effort setting those services up at a granular level as to what we will do, it becomes much easier to have those discussions with clients.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I hear people all the time say your engagement letters are too long. I much prefer to have a very, very long engagement letter with incredibly detailed services than just have a one line that says, "I'll be your tax agent," because that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, I'm going out to sit around a table with 3 generations, 8 or 10 people who we've just taken on board as a client. But one of the first things we'll do is pull out the proposal that they've already accepted, and sit down and go through it and continually educate clients about what the scope of our services is. I think that's really key.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Pete, for all of your time. That was really great to have a look at what you're able to do in your business, and I've learned a lot.
Absolute pleasure, Rebecca, and I've learned a lot from the other speakers as well.
It's been full of great information today. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much. You take care.
You too. And that wraps up our panel session of the webinar today. Next up, I'd love to introduce Brendan Allen, who is the Key Account Senior Manager of APAC at Ignition, and he's going to run us through a demo after he stopped being insulted by the fact I forgot that Newcastle's a lot closer to me.
I dare say 2 hours north, Beck, so I'm not going to forget that.
Maybe an hour and a half in a new Mustang, Brendan.
Maybe. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I got to echo Pete's sentiment there. I've been listening to and hosting these scope creep webinars for years and years and years now, probably 5, 6, 7 years, and that's probably one of the best ones I've come across, just to hear some of those wonderful stories from a few different types of accountants and bookkeepers out there. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to tie in a lot of what was just discussed around that particular topic of scope creep, but I want to bring it into a bit of a demo here. But I'm going to make it a bit of fun. I'm going to build a story here. I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways you can engage for clients using Ignition. But I want to introduce you to a very special client called Joey New Client. It's a very unique name, but Joey New Client has, let's just pretend Joey New Client has just approached us as an accountant or a bookkeeper, and we want to engage with Joey. And we've had a bit of a chat with Joey, and we think we know what he needs for his business. But we're a little bit afraid of that scope creep stuff that we've been talking about today. So we want to sort of understand Joey's needs, but also maybe anticipate some of the changes that may come up in the future. So I'm going to start by showing you one proposal, which is the one you can see on your screen now. And that is I'm going to call this the basic proposal. This is a really good way to engage people. This is the core of what Ignition does, and what Ignition does well is provides your clients with an electronic engagement that they can view all of the scope, all of the services, all the descriptions, understand the actual, so all your services are here. Click through to the next button, understand the pricing or the billing schedule to say, okay, so I can see here that we've got everything grouped together. Annual compliance is grouped together at $325 a month. Quarterly compliance is also charged at $100 a month. We've got additional compliance, and then even things like software subscriptions built into this proposal. This is great. This is magic. This is why people love Ignition, especially when you include the fact that clients are able to add their own payment methods here on acceptance, because it doesn't matter how well you manage scope creep. If you're not getting paid for the work you are doing, then you're in trouble. So payments is a big part of what we do really well too. And of course, we mentioned the engagement letter here itself a lot on this session. So that's great. This is wonderful. This is what people love about Ignition. I just wanted to expand that out now. So let's say we've had a bit more of a chat with Joey, or we've had some experience with a Joey New Client in the past, and we've learned from our mistakes, and we've decided to actually include a little bit more context into our proposal from now on. And maybe we've built a proposal template. And just a hint here, I spent about 2 minutes putting both of these proposals together because I used a template that's provided in Ignition out of the box for compliance work. So this one here is pretty much the same across the actual service descriptions, but you can see here, and this is something that Beck mentioned, actually I think everyone's mentioned this one, is the ability to add an out-of-scope service onto any proposal that goes out, which is a really good way to cover yourself for anything that happens beyond all of these wonderful services that we're offering. Under the pricing section, I've also made a few changes to this proposal that are small and probably won't make too much of a difference to the client experience, but it's going to make a heck of a lot of difference to you as a business owner and to your team as well. The first thing I've done here, you can see compared to the first one, under the pricing, I just had everything put through as a fixed fee, which is great. The second thing I've done here on this, or the first thing I've done on this second proposal, is added a few different elements in here to be a bit more ambiguous around the pricing for certain services. So if it is a brand new client, or if it's a client who's requesting a bunch of new services, even though you've been working with them for a while, the Ignition has the flexibility to add different price ranges. So here I can say that our annual company financial report and tax return is priced from $2,000. Our tax planning and advice is priced from $1,000, and our ASIC annual review is charged hourly. So apologies if I got the wrong sort of service descriptions here, but what I'm trying to show you here is that each service at Ignition can either be a simple fixed price agreement, However, if it's a new client or a client who's entering some sort of uncharted territory, you are well within your rights to offer them some sort of price range or a minimum price based on these services, because we don't really know what this client is going to be offering us or how hard it's going to be to work with this client, or maybe we're not even sure of the size of their business yet until we get to know them. The second thing I've done here, which is subtle, but again, this is something that Beck mentioned earlier around a 3-month check-in. We have a lot of people who use Ignition and do a 3-month engagement or a shorter engagement initially, because this one here is a 12-month. All of these services are built from acceptance for 12 months. This one here, I've set it up deliberately to be a 3-month engagement, so that even if we do have these fixed price agreements in place, $100 a month, $250 a month, $50 a month, we can indeed revisit that in 3 months, because we've set that up to expire in 3 months, renew that proposal with the client, have another discussion based on what we've learned over the last 3 months, and then increase those fees where applicable, or just keep them the same if we got it right. If you got it right, then congratulations, you've done well. The final piece, which I think, again, was mentioned by most, if not all, of the members on the panel today, is this nice little out-of-scope section here. So I've added it into its own little section down the bottom. And I've got a generic service here called out-of-scope services reviewed monthly, and that's exactly what we want to do with that. We want to let our clients know that if we have services that aren't part of the actual fixed price agreement, then we want to bill for that, and we're going to charge you $300 an hour. You can change that rate, put in whatever hourly rate you want, but the important thing is there you've got this item that is appearing monthly in the client record once the proposal's been accepted, to say, okay, Joey, we're 3 months in, we're 6 months in, we're 12 months in. This month you actually had a few more phone calls with us, or you requested, you bought a new farm. Maybe Joey bought a new farm, like Pete was saying before, and we want to make sure that we're including any of that work that was done throughout the month in their next invoice, and we can do that through Ignition. And the fact that we have their payment details already is fantastic. So segueing nicely onto that, let's accept this proposal. Clients can add their credit card or bank account details. This is a fake number, so don't even think about it. Okay, and we can save that payment method. So that is now attached to this proposal and also attached to this client record too, so that anything that comes up out of scope, we have a stored payment method. We can raise invoices out of scope anytime we want based on that little agreement there down the bottom, if you recall. The client then signs and accepts their proposal. Again, this engagement letter itself, it could have additional out-of-scope mentions in it as well. That means that if they sign and accept this proposal, they're also accepting additional out-of-scope terms. Maybe even things like hourly rates based on different types of seniority throughout your business. So let's go and get Joey to sign this. So Joey signed the proposal. It's been accepted with a save payment method, and all of our payments are starting to kick off. All of our invoices are going to kick off automatically. So you can see here now that we have an accepted proposal from Joey, which is now active. We now have a full billing schedule here, including manual items. So anything that's out of scope, any of these tax planning items charged at $1,000 at a minimum, $2,000 at a minimum, we can charge that when we're ready by clicking on the item or items and billing them and getting the money collected. We also have our automatic billing coming up as well. So everything is set and forget in regards to fixed fee, but you still retain some flexibility and control over these items here, depending on how much time you spend on that job. So that is one way of managing scope creep. Again, like Bo said, making sure that the upfront element is defined well, and making sure, again, what was said by Beck and Pete towards the end there, is letting clients know what's not included in case that does come up. The other thing I wanted to show you just quickly is if you do have a situation where maybe you've already billed the out-of-scope item for that month and something else has come up, we do have a great feature called Instant Bill, which I'll show you very quickly. Any client can be billed for any of your services in your library at any time. So I'm going to add that ad hoc service here again, just as an example. Oops, no, it's out of scope. Out-of-scope service. So we have an out-of-scope service. This is an instant bill that's going to get billed straight away. We can charge it as a fixed amount. Maybe we did $500 worth of work for this client. We can make it a bill on today. We can get it, or we can just let the client know, hey, I'm just going to raise a $500 invoice. I'm going to select your existing stored payment method, which you added when you accepted your original proposal, and then bill that client for that item there. And that's going to bill on Friday. if we've scheduled it out, or instantly if we've scheduled it for today. So instant bill is really helpful to get you out of a bind. If you've got a proposal that doesn't have any out of scope elements, you can instant bill any client at any time for any service. The last thing I want to show you very quickly is a new feature that we're very proud of, and it does fit nicely into the out of scope or scope creep topic. It's our new pricing intelligence tool. So we now have a great feature where you can come in and build any proposal. So you click on new proposal. When you start adding in services like you saw before, service A, service B, service C, whatever it is, you now have the ability to use our AI tool to analyze the price of that particular service. So if you see down here, there's the analyze price button. If you click that, it will actually give you the ability to add additional context. If, for example, it's a client that's maybe in a regional center, a city client, any additional context for that particular client and that particular service. Once you've done that, Ignition will actually analyze that service that you've added plus any additional context, and then spit out a suggested price range based on all of our data across all of our accepted proposals across all of our Ignition customers, without going into any specific detail, and letting you know what we think you're charging and if it's enough, if it's too much, if it's too little, and then give you some additional context and reasoning as to why we think you should be charging more or if you should be charging less. So a really important part of running a business is making sure you're charging the right fees. In a lot of cases, our customers are using this feature and figuring out that they should be charging a lot more than they should be. So that's another way of determining if you're charging the right fees initially as part of a scope creep management process. Once you're happy with that, you can change your price, use a suggested price, and update that price in your actual proposal, and then send the proposal out to get signed, having the confidence that you're actually charging the right fee based on your location, the type of services you're offering, and the type of client that you're working with. So that's our price insights. Absolutely love it. You get 3 price insights for free. So if you're an Ignition user now, or you're thinking about signing up to Ignition and you want to use your demo or your trial period to test some of your pricing, then you get 3 free price insights to have a crack. So I recommend having a play around with that. Reach out to us if you have any more additional questions. And that is it for the demo component. I hope I was able to tell a story there around scope creep. Wonderful. Okay. We're going to wrap it up there. Just wanted to let everyone know we do have a special offer at the moment, 50% off your first 3 months of Ignition for new Ignition customers. Priority onboarding as well, which is great. That's me and my wonderful key account management team. We'll have a chat to you and get you onboarded, set everything up for you, point out some of these wonderful scope creep features, help you understand price insights and anything else you need to do to get set up. Absolutely love my team and they love what they do. They would be very much willing to chat to you when you are ready to rock. We also have some great referral bonuses too. If you have anyone, if you're a current Ignition customer or you're not, and you have somebody you know would be a great fit for Ignition, let us know. We have some wonderful referral bonuses. If you want to get a personalized call or a demo, then let us know. There's a poll up on the screen now. We'll give you a buzz, no pressure, have a nice little chat. Or if you'd like to do a trial yourself, then click on that button there. We'll send you a link. A reminder, you can try all of those things we spoke about today. All of those features are available during trial. Even the price insight stuff is available there now. So get on that, have a play around, and let us know how you go. And that is it. Thank you, Beck. Let's just say a big thank you also to our wonderful panelists. I sincerely meant that. I learned so much today. Again, I've been doing these scope creep webinars for many, many years, and I have actually picked up some stuff that I want to talk about with my customers now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Beck, for hosting. Thank you, Manuela, in the background. You didn't see Manuela, but she's doing a great job moving everything around. It's magic because I don't have to do it. So thank you, everyone involved. Have a great day. Have a great evening. Chat soon.